Welcome to Cloud Insiders, the podcast that brings cloud down to earth.
Today we're joined by Sunny Dewar from VMware and Simon Eady from Xtravirt. Glad to have you both with us.
Pleasure.
So today we're going to be talking about cloud management within today's IT organisations, the importance of cloud management, along with some of the tools and key players in this sector. Before we get started, Sunny, could you introduce yourself quickly with a bit of a background on what you do?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Sunny, and I work for VMware within the Cloud Management Business Unit. I've been around with VMware for close to 8 years now, and I've been working in the enterprise IT segment for close to 13 years now. Today, I would be happy to join Simon and you, Sam, to talk about cloud management and my experiences around it. So thank you for having me.
Excellent. And Simon?
Yeah, so I'm Simon Eady. I work currently for Xtravirt as a senior consultant. I've been there 2.5 years. I've been doing IT for the better part of 20 years. The last sort of 6 or so years has been very VMware virtualization focused, and more predominantly a lot of VROPS work in the last year or so.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. So let's get started. What is cloud management and why is it important?
I'll give it a stab at it since I belong to the Cloud Management Business Unit. So I think if you look at the traditional world of IT, management is one of the areas which has not evolved over a period of time. It's the area where people still look at things in a more proactive way as compared to, a reactive way as compared to a proactive way. And when I say management, it's about monitoring, it's about making sure your lights are on and making sure that you're giving services to your business, which you're supposed to as an IT organization. But if you look at the concept of cloud computing, it always dictates that you should have more agility and you should have scalability. At the same time, you should have uptime and availability with security, and all these beautiful bells and whistles, which basically make a cloud service more agile. Now, if we do not go ahead and transform the way we monitor IT or manage IT from a traditional world perspective to a cloud perspective, then it really will bring down or diminish the returns which you should get in a cloud platform or a cloud environment. And hence, it's very important that we kind of transform from where we were from a management perspective and move towards cloud management for getting the returns which we expect from a cloud system.
Okay, Simon, is your opinion on that relatively sort of similar, or have you got a different?
Pretty much. I mean, as Sunny was saying, it certainly in the past it was often more of an afterthought. You know, they wanted to get the piece of IT working, and perhaps the monitoring or the management of it, or any products that did that really well, didn't always get a fair share of the budget. And now with cloud existing and being as agile as it is, and the demands, and people expect stuff to happen very, very quickly, monitoring tools are very much catching up or have caught up. But with the management tools, they've got to be capable of handling that, the ability to be agile, and I say that word, to be flexible and quick, not just react, as Sunny was saying, but also be able to predict. So, tell you, by the way, in a week's time, you may have this issue because of all this information that I've got for you. And it obviously depends on the products that you've got, but the whole management side of that thing should get an awful lot more focus.
Okay. So you both mentioned, obviously, traditional IT management systems. Where do you see cloud management fitting in? Is it a separate sort of product in itself, or can they kind of work side by side with each other?
So if you look at traditional IT systems and kind of go back 15 years from now, you would really, when you look at a data center, it's a really silo piece of machinery. And when I say that, I'm kind of pushing towards the physical world where each application, or maybe a couple of applications, had their own home to live on. So they were having their own piece of hardware, their own connected storage, and everything was kind of dedicated to them, right? And so if you look at from a cloud admin or an administrator perspective who's managing that piece of hardware and the application, they would know where to go and what to do in order to fix a particular problem which they might face with that application. But 15 years fast forward, we see that things have changed completely. The applications are no longer tied to physical hardware. In fact, with microservices, you can see that they're no longer tied to OS as well. And things are pretty loosely coupled across the entire data center. And hence, what happens is that you'll not be able to get the visibility which you had 15 years ago in today's world. And that's where the difference between traditional IT as well as modern IT is, where it's important for a CIO at the high level and for the IT admin at the junior level and everybody in between to have visibility into what their job is and what they're managing or running or protecting on a day-to-day basis. And that visibility is key to cloud management.
Okay, thank you. So are some of those sort of with the whole application no longer being tied down and apps not being siloed anymore, are they some of the market factors sort of driving this adoption? Are you seeing any other things sort of making cloud management sort of up there on the horizon?
I think leading on from what Sonny was saying, I mean, the old approaches just aren't valid anymore. I mean, they might work with legacy infrastructure, and sure, there's still quite a lot of that banging around. But, you know, if you look at virtualization, it's treating what were servers and it's putting lots of those together, and they're a pool of things that your applications or virtual machines can live on. And they're moving around all the time, particularly in large enterprise scale clouds, or if you're using public clouds, they're to keep a handle on where that stuff is, what it's doing and why it's doing it, you need a tool that's appropriate, or you need appropriate cloud management tools to do that job. It's a completely different world from what it was, as Sonny was saying, 15 years ago. Everybody had, I suppose, spreadsheets. You know, once you put in that server in the rack and that was your domain controller, and this server here, that's my SQL server. Those days are more or less dead. I know the futurologists would be like, yeah, that was gone years ago, but you've still got people doing P2Vs now. But in essence, that's not how people are doing anything anymore. So the tools that used to accommodate for that are no longer valid, and everything has evolved to be able to manage the private cloud, your hybrid cloud, and your public cloud.
Yep, and I just wanted to add to that is that so me and Simon being focused on operations, we are just talking about day two here, and we've not even touched about management as a day one concept, management as a day zero concept. We know that provisioning is one of the biggest piece of management, and that's what has completely changed in cloud, which was so something which used to take months for getting a piece of hardware and then installing operating system on it, hardening it, and getting it ready for an application owner is literally taking a few minutes now. And it's no longer a marketing gimmick as well, as we all know, right? We see that organizations are provisioning virtual machines in minutes, and they're getting it ready with all and everything. Or I've seen customers having 50 to 60 different workflows kicking in and automating everything, and literally in an hour or so, the application guy gets what he needs, and most of the times he already has his basic middleware database tools installed on that piece of hardware or piece of server. Now, if you think about moving from 3 months to 30 minutes kind of a time frame, that's a huge transformation. And from a provisioning standpoint, it's important that people start looking at, or if they really want to adopt cloud and manage it appropriately, they start looking at automating their processes and getting where they want to be from a time to market perspective. And that's where, right from provisioning on day zero to management or operating on day two, everything in between is cloud management for me. And as Simon mentioned, it is pretty much running side by side with traditional IT. And there are transformations and movements happening from old environments to new environments. And that's how all these IT projects, which I've participated in the past 10 years or so, are running.
Simon, do you agree around sort of the whole cloud management is more than just the looking after of the kit? It's literally from day zero, before you've even provisioned it, you need to sort of have a handle on what you're doing, where you're going, and how you're approaching those things.
Absolutely. I mean, there are many tools and cloud offerings, from Microsoft, VMware, You've got the OpenStack options, Google, Amazon. There are plenty of choices to do this work, and some of them will do the automation bits for you, and some people want to do the automation themselves depending on their size and their needs and requirements. So yeah, absolutely. One thing that is important though is while you've got the day zero and the day one, it's also kind of circular in my head that once you've got up and running and you start to grow, you need that day two to then feed back to the day zero when you're provisioning new hardware, because you've got a better handle. If you've got the appropriate cloud management tool, software approach, you'll understand all the information and you'll have it at your fingertips and say, right, I know exactly what I need for my next growth period or whatever it might be. And that just goes round and round. And the better you handle it, the more accurate it goes. And that just leads to, things like the bottom line. You make savings here, you're getting better use out of your equipment, your customers are happier, all those things. It's just a big win, really.
Yeah, so it's no longer just a case of making sure things are on. It's the whole life cycle, isn't it? It's making sure the capacity's there, how to plan for the future, that kind of stuff.
Yep, absolutely. And kind of, we're just not talking about infrastructure in silo. We're talking about the entire life cycle, and which includes capacity, performance, availability, configuration, and so on and so forth. And just to add to Simon's point, when he mentioned that we go ahead and feedback from what we learn into day zero so that we can make our processes better, I think those are the golden words right there. I remember talking to a customer, and his number one agenda, being the VP of IT, was to create fail-fast solutions. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And fail-fast was a term which he used literally every day in every email of his or every conversation or every meeting. And his only idea was that do not wait for things to move. Do not wait for building large, monolithic systems. It's always better to create a minimal viable product and then use that to go ahead and learn out of what you're doing. And that will help you create a better product. And that's how large enterprise IT organizations today are adopting methodologies such as Agile and Scrum, and using them to actually build cloud management. Because literally, you might get a tool from VMware or Microsoft or from Amazon from a public cloud perspective, but that's all technology. You still need to weave in people and processes which you currently have and probably which you will transform over a period of time into the whole story for you to be successful with cloud management.
So you've mentioned large enterprise IT organizations. Are they the only clients looking at cloud management, or is this a broader spectrum in terms of the people who are using it?
That's a good question. I think certainly in my experience, a lot of the tools would allude to being very enterprise. Perhaps the size of them or the complexity of them would, I suppose, insinuate that it's just enterprise or large scale compute. But a lot of smaller customers, I say smaller, I just mean in size, perhaps the number of users that they have, or just the sheer size of the business itself being quite small in comparison. They want to have enterprise capable tools because their demands, their users have the same expectations as, the users in a bank. So my experience has been, okay, it might not be as complex because of the size, but the expectation and the feature sets and the capabilities, people are expecting that at the small business, medium, and enterprise scale. So I've seen it at all levels so far.
Yep, I can kind of agree with you, Simon. Especially when startups are trying to compete with large giants, it's basically both of them have a benefit. The large giants have already figured out what their cloud strategy is, and the startups have the opportunity to go ahead and choose these public cloud offerings available with different vendors and kind of get on par with what the large giants are doing. Now, in both these processes, you would see that even the small organizations are trying to make sure that they have some IT footprint within their systems because they want to go ahead and start build more reliability into their services. And at the same time, when you look at these large organizations that we were discussing, they are making sure that they also have a foot in the door of a cloud provider, in certain case, multiple cloud providers, and that's just to make sure that they can mitigate the risk and make sure that they are able to utilize or test all these services based on their requirements. And if they have a piece of business which requires them to move really fast, and then they look at these public cloud offerings as well and try to adopt them as soon as possible. Now, what this brings on the table is complexity. And I do want to talk about that even before you ask the next question, is because now we're looking at small organizations, large organizations, on-private, public, hybrid, and management has now moved kind of out of your office, and it's moved into multiple different locations, multiple different clouds, multiple different services that you're getting from various different vendors. And some of those services are homegrown as well. Now, to go ahead and manage all this is, I think, the next biggest opportunity which is out there from a cloud management perspective. What do you think, Simon?
Yeah, I think that there hasn't, I say this loosely, I don't think anyone yet has completely cracked the ability to a single product that can do it all, or at least I'm not aware of one yet. There are lots of tools out there that are very capable, and they hook into many. But yeah, that I suppose you could look at it as a holy grail. If you know, if cloud management and monitoring and all of that is really your cup of tea, then that's a big important factor, especially, you know, if you have I'm going to say medium to enterprise, where you have a significant private cloud where there's investment and that's not going away anytime soon. You've already looked and are using hybrid cloud, and you also have, you know, public cloud areas where you're using, you know, Amazon, Google, or Azure for different things as well. The ability to know where everything is, what it's doing, how much it's costing you, you know, where would it be better placed? You know, is it actually good that you've placed those VMs? You know, the developers have placed them there. Would it be better if they were over here? You know, those are questions that you can answer with good tools and good cloud management. Just because you put it there in the first place doesn't mean that's where it's best served for everybody. You know, you'll get these silos of people who will have put stuff where they think is best. And if you've got a tool that's able to give you a rational, you know, it'll say, right, okay, it needs this amount of compute with this amount of flexibility. Yeah, this is kind of doing it, but if you put it here, it's going to be really good. That's awesome. That's the kind of thing that you want.
Yep, artificial intelligence kicks in. Absolutely. I mean, those are the top priorities of any customer you walk into today, especially the ones who kind of matured in this area, for sure. I agree.
Cool, that's great, guys. So in terms of these tools that are available, so until we get to this holy grail and it does it all, what ones are around at the moment that we can use?
Oh,
That comes to a tooling discussion. But to be honest, I mean, as Simon mentioned, right, there is no single solution which does this today. But the good news from, and I can speak for VMware, is that we've kind of already cracked the code in terms of kind of laying down the foundation of what are the key services which would be used by in the end state of when everything comes together for customers. And those key services, have been, there are tools available to look at those today from a perspective of individual silos. With last year's VMware, we kind of announced our cross-cloud capabilities and products around that. Though we were just talking about technical preview, and we gave a preview of this cross-cloud portal where you could actually log in and do multiple things on this particular portal. And this is kind of an essence of bringing multiple different services together for you so that you can kind of consume them from a common API or a common portal. And that's where the world is going towards. And the one who is able to deliver this with the ease and with simple processes around those is the one who's going to be successful in time to come. That is a little bit ahead of time at this moment. But coming back to where we are today, there are tools which can actually give that visibility on-premise and into cloud. And I'm fortunate enough to work on some of them. In fact, I've been working on vRealize Operations Manager as one of the platform tools, which allows you to kind of switch in or switch off whenever you want and get connected to multiple data sources within your data center or outside your data center. And all this data is then is what is required for any good analytics tool to go ahead and give you meaningful results or meaningful information or actions, which Simon was just talking about. And then you club around services of costing as well as discovery on top of it so that you can make all those intelligent decisions. So as Simon mentioned, there's no single tool which does that today, but there are multiple combinations available from VMware and other vendors as well, which can basically help you achieve that. And Simon, probably you can speak about that more. I don't want to kind of
that's
my
fine.
band.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if it's not already apparent, I mean, I also lean very heavily on VROPS. That's what I've got a lot of experience in. But those aren't the only products that are available, not by a long shot. I mean, you've got SolarWinds. Veeam have their monitoring product called Veeam One. You now have Turbonomics, who've been around a good while, and you've also got Foglight, and there are other products out there as well. Those are by no means a short list. That's just the list that comes to mind. So it comes down to what you really want to achieve in terms of your monitoring and your management. VROPS is regarded as a heavyweight in there because it not only can it just plug into everything vSphere and so on, but it can do an awful lot more than that. One of the things I think only SolarWinds does it, but the dynamic thresholds, which is a key selling point for VROPS for a long time, that's something that SolarWinds also does. If you want something that's more instantaneous in terms of metrics, then Veeam One is very good at that. Turbonomics, one of their key selling points was about being able to not just move workloads around, but do predictive moving around, which again VROPS is very much doing now as well with their predictive DRS, which was released last year. Foglight, I don't know so much about that product, but it's been in the field for a very long time and it's got a good reputation. So really, if you're going to be entering the marketplace and thinking, right, I need a tool that's going to do what I need it to do, you really need to look at those and as well as others and think to yourself, what is it you really need right now? Is it a ticketing type system? Do I need instant results? Do I need to predict my things? Do I need to move workloads? Do I need reports? Do I need dashboards? Is it for a knock? Loads and loads of questions, and all these products have different strengths. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So by the looks of things,
was a good answer.
It was very good. Yeah. So by the looks of things, it's quite a complex thing, isn't it? Cloud management in itself. You've given a few good examples of the questions you need to be asking your organisation or yourself around the planning. What else do sort of companies need to start thinking about when they're looking at these cloud management products?
So yeah, I would probably give a stab at that, and then Simon, you can add in. So I think the few mistakes which I have seen, which customers do around cloud management, is looking at short-term solutions, is looking at use cases which they want to solve right now. So that's because somebody in the organization or line of business has asked for that, and they want to go ahead and make sure that they can execute those use cases as soon as possible. While time to market is important, it's very, very important for customers to understand that they need to write on certain tools or technologies which can actually help them build these frameworks of cloud within the organization, which we call on-premise or private cloud. And then they should be able to extend these frameworks in a simple fashion or manner to go ahead and embrace the public cloud. Now, the reason why this is important is because you are kind of taking the entire organization, or at least the IT organization, upside down when you're moving from a traditional physical world to virtual world. And then you're doing that again, all over again, when you're moving towards automating through private cloud. And now you don't want to do that change again when you move on to the public cloud. Hence, if you have a right framework which is extensible in nature, it'll help you to go ahead and adopt newer technologies as they are released in the market. So that's my single biggest tip, that go ahead, look at long term, think long term, and also understand what kind of extensibility the platform you're choosing is providing, because that's very important. We all hear from each IT organization today about the story of API first, and that's the story which kind of applies over here. Look at APIs and how open they are so that your systems can interact with other systems which you may or may not have, but maybe your cloud provider has in the future. And that'll help you kind of weave the entire environment from your on-premise to public cloud together and kind of manage them, not from a single pane of glass, because that's kind of a overabused term, but easily, I would say. That's what my take is.
Yeah, that's good. There are a few other things I'm thinking of, having come out of several years ago when we used to manage budgets rather than as a consultant now. You're going to be looking at a product if it's not already in your license pool. So if you have enterprise licensing with a vendor, often these tools are included in that. But if it's not, then obviously you have to sit down and think a little bit harder about what tools will fit. And sometimes it's budget driven. So you need, and I'll say this loosely, an enterprise type management product. Go and you get given instruction from the board, go and find a tool that does the job, and please don't make it too expensive. But aside from that, which is more of a constraint, really it's not just a costing, but you need to be looking at what it is long term the business is doing. So you want kind of going to be telling people to suck eggs here, but you need to understand where the business is going. Are they taking on more and more separate public cloud works, or are they focused very much on the private cloud? And that, if that's the case, then the tool obviously has to accommodate that. If it doesn't, well, it's not really worth its weight. In other complete different extreme, you've got people that have these tools and they're simply not using them, or they're not aware that they have them, and to utilize the strength in them. Often we use VROps as an example. It comes as a part of their license suite, the cloud suite. And I have been to many, many customers where it has been shelfware. And the reason I have come in is because they're like, yeah, we've got this product. We've never really looked at it. Show us what it can do. There's little or no awareness about what it's capable of. And then after a week with the customer, they're like, wow, why didn't we use this before? And that's extremely common. As for the rationale behind why they decided to look at it, it could have been all manner of reasons. They could have had a serious outage. It might have been that they've got a new CTO. You could write a list as to reasons why they want to look at a new management or monitoring platform, but there it is.
You mentioned there around the whole people not being aware of it within their licensing agreements, that kind of stuff. Is that because it's quite a new thing still, the whole cloud management? Obviously, bigger organisations such as VMware have been working on tools for a while, but you've got your startups and your enterprises that it might be a completely new thing to. Is that sort of quite a common thing? It's just such a new area that people aren't aware of it?
So I think what Simon mentioned is correct from a perspective of the fact that mostly when you buy a technology, the management piece of the technology is kind of plugged in from any vendor today, right? You buy a car with a music system, or you buy a Tesla, they will ensure that you have all the fancy tools in the world to go and manage your car, and that's important, right? But think about it. You always manage, or you try to manage or troubleshoot or do anything which you have to do from a perspective of saving yourself if systems are down on day 2, not on day 1. Now, that's where the maturity of IT comes into picture. And if you look at matured organizations today who've gone through these phases, they would have already chosen what they want to do and laid out processes and SLAs around how they will perform or support IT systems on day 2. And they also make sure that they have the tooling available for that. But when you move on from that side of the world to the small and medium businesses, they are more worried about making sure that they are able to go ahead and deliver IT to business as soon as possible because business cannot kind of suffer or wait. And they really want to go ahead and roll out services because they are startups and they want to make sure that they can capture as much market as possible and kind of build their reputation around their product. And IT kind of becomes secondary thought for them, which for me is absolutely the right approach because you should be worried about your own business rather than making IT your business, which some of the large organizations have unfortunately done today. But that's the nature, right? That's the nature of this service which you build for over a period of time. Now, that's why for the customers who are more focused on their business line, or are never worried about IT or very worried about managing IT from day number one. But when they kind of get a setback from downtimes or failures in the data center is when they realize that they need to have more robust systems, which could be giving them information around uptimes, around performance, around capacity, because all these problems or areas are not really exposed on day number one of using an IT system. But as soon as you move into day number two and you actually start using the system and start applying load on these systems, you see that there could be issues. And that's when you start worrying about tooling. And the only advice which I would give to customers is that even before you start thinking about building an application or an IT system, you need to think about how would you support it if it fails. And that's where the success would be. I mean, we can speak about a number of organizations who've closed over a period of time because of these IT downtimes. And they had fantastic products, they had great market value, but their IT could not support because of the fact that they were not concentrating on making sure that they had systems which can help them predict failure and help them solve issues when they happen as soon as possible. So that's my take on it. It's important. However, it has been neglected, as Simon mentioned before.
I'm gonna tackle the what types of businesses and the common mistakes thing in one go here, which will be an interesting effort. So typically what I've seen is the types of businesses that are usually all over this are service providers, people who are providing services, IT services to end users, whether they be businesses or so commercial as well as residential type things, so it could just be, your Facebook or whatever it might be. Those guys, they're going to be on their monitoring game all the time because they're providing a service and they know the phone will be ringing and the emails will land faster than they can believe if one of their systems goes offline. So really, as a service provider of any kind, and I'm not just talking about traditional service providers, you need to be on your game. So not only do you want to know that there's an issue, but you want to know that that issue is coming. And usually these guys have got a pretty good handle on that, and they're always looking at ways of making that better. That's a conversation I've had many times with customers. Then you've got the sort of the next step back from that, where you have businesses in a private sense where they have adopted this methodology where the IT team are providing services to their internal users, whether they be developers or sales teams or managers, whatever they might be. And they've, I suppose, commoditized what they've got internally, and they want to be able to deliver the best service they can. Therefore, they're looking at the demands, they're getting everything right. And I think that's a really healthy approach. And then you've kind of got the final thing, which is more reactive, which, is, I think, getting older and older in terms of that approach, because ultimately your monitoring tools there tell you when something is either broken, on fire, or dead. And sometimes that's too late. And then there's a huge reliance on DR over proactive maintenance or being able to tackle the issue before it lands, or at least even having awareness of how something went down. So, when they're doing a root cause analysis afterwards, because not every tool is going to be able to predict a fault or an issue. But if you've got good enough tools that can say this went wrong because, but if you have no idea other than it went down, that's not going to help you. And it adds a huge risk and a question mark, and it just puts pressure and stress and so on. So in terms of common mistakes and about all of that, the implementation of the tools has to suit your environment. if you've got a very heavy customer driven environment where people are going to be aware of any kind of outage within seconds, then you need a tool that's going to be able to facilitate that. If things are a little bit more relaxed, then you can dial it back a bit.
That's great, thank you, Simon. So we're seeing sort of organisations move into more of a proactive approach, aren't we, now, rather than sort of reactive where it has been?
I think so. You're always going to get people dragging their heels because perhaps the understanding isn't there, or the will isn't there, whatever you want to call it, disenfranchised team members, all of the, pick any reason out of the hat. But ultimately, if you've got a tool in place that can help you keep an eye on your infrastructure and tell you, by the way, the DevOps team have been recently, or the developer team have been putting up loads of new SQL servers or lots of new servers and stuff. If you didn't have the tools to tell you this, and then say in a week's time you're going to run out of space on your data stores, or you need more of this, or it would be better placed there, you don't hit that wall and have no answers, because at the end of the day, people are going to come straight to the IT, your table, or you'll get a phone call and they say something's gone down, or I can't provision anymore. Fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it. And no one needs that drama.
Definitely. So, Sonny, just coming back to you before we approach the end, what are VMware doing within this area? How are they fixing things for us?
If you look at VMware around the virtualization market, of course, we were the first one to go ahead and do that. And then, as I said in the beginning of our conversation, is as you move towards the virtual infrastructure, the complexity gains up. And as the complexity increases, you need to have tools which can help you or give you the visibility which Simon was just mentioning. So that's the part of day 2 operations. Then there's a day 0 and day 1 in which you need to go ahead and provision faster, for better time to market, agility, etc. Now, over a period of time with multiple acquisitions, which are, of course, inorganic and organic growth, VMware has this huge portfolio which basically allows you to kind of look at what we discussed today from a perspective of day 0 provisioning, and then going ahead and managing those workloads and doing the entire life cycle, so that you can go ahead and feed back into processes and improve them, and then extend your capabilities out to third-party solutions, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. We kind of, in the cloud management business unit, we kind of work on vRealize Suite, which is our flagship suite of products, which includes vRealize Automation, vRealize Orchestrator, and CodeStream. And along with that, from a provisioning standpoint and configuration management standpoint, and from a perspective of operations, we have the whole vRealize Operations Suite, which again allows you to go ahead and give you that day 2 capabilities around performance management, capacity management, alerting, etc. And as I mentioned in my earlier conversation, all these tools are API driven. Hence, it's easy for us to go ahead and extend our services, either to go ahead and provision on solutions other than vSphere or VMware solutions, or go ahead and gather data and intelligent metrics or logs. And I forgot mentioning about Log Insight, which again is a part of the VROps suite itself. And all these products basically are extensible for you to go ahead and reach out from a perspective of provisioning and gather information from a perspective of day 2 monitoring and capacity management, etc. So that's the kind of on-premise suite of products which we have. And with our association with Amazon and the announcements which were made during VMworld in Barcelona, we did talk about our services which will be cross-cloud capable, and these are all cloud management services. So from an overall agenda perspective, we currently are, if not amongst the top, I would say, from a cloud management perspective. And from a futuristic approach, which is kind of extensible to public cloud as well, but from a futuristic approach, when people are able to adopt these multi-cloud technologies or capabilities, and VMware is already looking into the direction of making sure that we can provide you cross-cloud capabilities across the likes of VMware and IBM and Amazon, so that you have a single API to go to and talk to perform various services which we've discussed today.
That's great, thank you. It sounds like VMware's covering quite a few corners there. In terms of the future and trends, I know you've just mentioned cross-cloud, but what else do you see coming?
So for the biggest thing which I see along with the cross-cloud services is microservices, containers, Docker, Kubernetes, vSphere integrated containers, and the challenges around provisioning and monitoring those, where basically you would see operations has to transform and help developers, and where the whole concept of DevOps comes in and make sure that you're able to provision and manage your own kind of small environments which you're building up, whether it's within a virtual machine or inside a container. The visibility around performance, capacity, configuration, availability is very important. And whatever you had in the physical world kind of rolled down into the virtual infrastructure and became a little complex because you were kind of sharing resources. And now you're actually going and building microservices where you're running multiple applications in form of containers inside an operating system. So you kind of going down, right? I mean, if you remember, I've seen videos where you start with a speck of atom, and then it kind of zooms out and you can see the entire space, and then it zooms in as well. And that's how IT is flowing as well. You were in the physical world where you had a zoomed out approach or view of the universe, and now you're kind of zooming in and going inside to that super atom level. And at all these levels, it's important that you're able to provide the services which the business owners or your customers expect you to provide. And that's where I think the future is going. You go further down into the compute models and further down into the bits and bytes and explore more around those. And you would need to have visibility across all these different channels. And that's where I think we are heading. And I think it's long term, which what I'm talking about, but I'm sure we will see that in our lifetime.
That's awesome. Simon, what about you? Do you see the same sort of things, especially from a consulting point of view?
Absolutely. I think taking a step back and not looking at it purely from one vendor or another, any cloud management tool or suite has to embrace the other tools and the other products out there. It's that or die or become irrelevant. You have to have, businesses have now got the ability and the flexibility to basically pick up a public cloud anytime they want. Private cloud's a little bit harder, but many have mixed bags there as well, and they don't want to have 10 different tools to do that. They want to be able to ultimately have at least one or two tools, one-stop shop, whatever you want to call it, where that can plug into all of the environments that they've chosen to invest in for their reasons and purposes. And if your tool, I suppose this is me sort of making a stake in the ground because of talking to customers, they want a tool that can talk to all of the public clouds that they want to use, all of the hybrid options, their private cloud offerings, so that they don't have to keep spending that money again and again and again on different tools, or having to reinvest on another tool because that one does this one better or whatever. It's like embrace all of that options, or your tool will just die. I'll use VROPS as an example. Its options and abilities to plug into the vast majority of stuff makes it a very strong contender. Other products I know are doing something similar. If you're not doing that and you're not having those plugins, those options, APIs, whatever you want to call them, then it's how long before you become irrelevant. That's what I'm seeing from a customer demand point of view, and that's a requirement in terms of workloads that people are placing up there for reasons. Every business has its different reasons, its business cases. There's no point trying to figure out why they're making those choices. If they've made those choices, they want to be able to monitor them.
That's excellent. Thank you. Guys, we're going to wrap up now. And before we do, did you want to sort of give a quick sort of introduction or background on your VROPS webinar series that you do?
Sure. So I've been really lucky to have met Simon over Twitter. We've never met in person, but he had a great idea around going ahead and sharing whatever work we do with our customers in the field through a webinar series on VRLize Operations Manager. And that's what we started back. I think this was December 2015 when we were discussing this. And,
That's right, yeah.
And I think January is when we started. 20th of Jan is when we started with our first episode of this year-long series. And it's about educating customers. It's about telling them how they can improve or how they can utilize or their investments into VRLize Operations Manager. And we kind of took it the whole 9 yards by not just going ahead and talking about the product and the features and how they can be used, but also extending it to physical or live demos, I should say, with showcasing use cases being delivered at the end of the day by VROps. So that's what we did for the entire series. And you might want to talk about the 2017 and what our plans are on that.
Yeah, just to round off what Sonny was saying there as well, we were lucky enough to get some guests in as well. We had Ewan and Vinith and a few others, which was awesome. You know, these were the SMEs in their respective areas and disciplines, and how it complemented VROps and how they got the most from VROps in that. Speaking about this year, we are a little bit late, but there are reasons for that, which will become apparent at a later date. But we will be doing the webinar series carrying on this year, and it'll be myself and Sonny and other things, without giving away too much.
Absolutely.
Where can people find this webinar series, and also how can we find out about you guys on Twitter and things like that?
Yeah, so we've been able to post all the episodes on YouTube, and an easier way to find this would be to go to Simon's blog or my blog. My blog is vexpress.blogspot.com, and I tweet on my Twitter handle, which is sunny_dua. So, and Simon, you want to talk about your blog?
Yeah, so I share a blog with a colleague of mine, Sam McGowan. The blog is definite.co.uk, and my Twitter handle is @SimonEady. I'm generally on Twitter quite a lot, so if you wanted to reach out and poke me, then that's a great place to do it.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. That's been awesome, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of another episode of Cloud Insiders. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. And to find out more and access show notes and downloads, head over to cloudinsiders.fm. You can track us on Twitter @cloudinsiders, and we'd love you to leave us a review on iTunes. See you next time.